Good morning. Today's Monday, July 6th, which means we're all just coming off of a big celebration this weekend. It's been 250 years since the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. We are a baby as nations go. We like to think we're all this, but we are a very young country if you step back and look at the history of the world and the other nations that we deal with quite regularly. So today I want to talk about fidelity to the Constitution of the United States. I think it's appropriate while everybody's still feeling their patrioticness. And being patriotic is much more than just wearing red, white, and blue. Anybody can wrap themselves in the country's colors. Anybody can wrap themselves in the flag. Anybody can hug a flag and kiss it. Anybody can wear red, white, and blue. But just wearing red, white, and blue doesn't make you automatically a patriot. You gotta walk the walk. You can't just talk the talk. And in my view, if you're a true patriot for the country, then you have to have fidelity to the Constitution. That's why all the people who get elected to office, our military, others in society who are, in positions of authority, they take an oath to the Constitution, because fidelity to the Constitution is really what makes this country great. And if you don't have that, then that's when we become no longer great. Fidelity to the Constitution is pretty simple. It just means you show unswerving loyalty to the supreme law of the land, the United States Constitution and our amendments, rather than an individual leader or political party. Now, most recently, I seem to be pigeonholed a lot, but in my lifetime, I have voted Republican. I have voted Democrat. At one point or another, I was registered to either of those parties. I've also been a registered independent. I've voted independent. I've written candidates in. I never just go throw the switch all blue, all red. And a lot of people do. It's statistically proven. A third of the country will just vote for one party and a third of the country will vote for another. And to me, I think that's the easy way out. You need to look at, what are these people saying? What is their history? What have they done in the past? Do they have basic morality and integrity? These are important things if someone's going to lead our nation. But that's why the loyalty must be to the United States Constitution, which means it requires upholding the rule of law and holding our leaders accountable when they break that rule of law. It means respecting the checks and balances that the founders built in to the system so there'd be, checks and balances. So one branch just didn't have all this power. So when you have one branch or two branches or any branch not living up to its part of the bargain, then that causes a problem. So they have to respect the checks and balances. The people have to demand that the checks and balances are enforced and utilized, as well that laws are followed. And then we need to protect the rights and the principles outlined in our foundational document. The foundational principles of the Declaration of Independence pretty much boil down to four, what some people call game-changing ideas about human beings and government. One is equality. We're all created equally, okay? No one person is born with a divine right to rule over others in our nation. Everyone is entitled to the same fundamental level of dignity and fair treatment. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it's written on the paper. But we all know that's not true. The wealthy and the powerful function under an entirely different set of rules than people like you and I. And too many of us sit there and stand by and let them. We're almost at a point in our history right now, I think we're at the point where it's almost like a class warfare. We have so much wealth concentrated up here at the top, and all this down below, they got a plate full of cookies, and we're fighting over the half a cookie they let drop down. I mean, it's just where we're at. But we are entitled to the same level of human dignity and fair treatment. And I think with all the lobbying and all the money going into Washington, that's pretty much taking that away. It is not a fair and level playing field. Natural rights. Let's talk about the natural rights. We have rights simply because we exist. Now, I'm going to come back to that one in a moment. So that's number two. The third one is consent of the governed. The government is supposed to only get their power from the people who live under them. A president is just a regular person unless citizens agree to let them lead. Case in point, a leader can get elected and become president. A person can get elected and become president. But at the same time, we're allowed to disagree. Hell, you're even allowed to say, oh, I made a mistake. If you think voting for Biden was a mistake, Obama was a mistake, Trump was a mistake, you're allowed to say, you know what, I made a mistake. And even if you voted for a person, you're still allowed to hold them accountable. They make promises. They are to be held accountable. That's the duty of all of us. That's our constitutional duty. Because the main purpose of government, as laid out by our founding fathers, was to be a security guard to protect our natural rights. And that means everybody's rights. That means LGBTQ. It means people of color. It means men and women. It means no matter what religion you practice, or if you choose not to practice religion, we're all supposed to have those rights. But the caveat is, you can't yell fire in a movie theater. Hate speech, there's certain lines that you do not cross. And those are covered there too. So the other part of that is, the fourth thing, remember I'm going to go back to one, is the right to alter or abolish the government. Now, I'm not saying take up arms, but as a society, we have a right that if the government breaks the rules, we can fire them. They make all these campaign promises on the trail while they're lining their pockets with money. They're making a contract with us. When they do that, when they say they're going to do certain things and they get elected, there's a contract that's made there, okay? So when they break their contract and break their promises, it's okay to hold them accountable. If the government stops protecting the rights of anyone and starts to become tyrannical in any of the way they function or conduct themselves, citizens, we have the ultimate right to change that system. Now, and we don't have to wait for midterms or elections because we have congressional representatives that are supposed to function as checks and balances. And if they're hearing it from their constituency that, we don't like the way things are being led here, it's their job to represent the people that are contacting them, reaching out to them. Their job is not to be loyal to a person either. Their job is to have fidelity to the Constitution. They swear an oath on it. So I want to go back to the second thing, which was the natural rights, the unalienable rights. And we do have rights because we exist, not because the government gives them to us. Yes, we have a framework of laws, but when you get right down to it, when you're born, you have rights. And the big three that were highlighted by Thomas Jefferson were life, which is the right to live safely and freely. And if we have people in society who do not feel safe in America, then the government is doing something wrong. Liberty. I'm allowed to make this video and I can speak. And I can say, you know what, I'm against fascism. Because I happen to be against fascism. So someone will say, well, you're anti-fascist. That's what Antifa stands for. Okay? But that means I should be able to speak that opinion and not worry about ICE or the Gestapo come and knock on my door, right? And the pursuit of happiness. Again, the caveat is you don't harm others. Hate speech and going after other groups. There's lines that aren't crossed. There's moral and ethical limitations. But, you get to try to do the job that you want. You get to own property. You get to practice the faith that you want. You don't have one faith just jammed down your throat. You don't have to practice any faith. Those are some biggies that were outlined by Jefferson. So I guess the bottom line is that when I vote for a person, do I expect them to represent me? Yes. But I also expect them to try to fairly represent the people that voted against them, because even the people who voted against them are Americans. And if they've exercised their right to vote, then they're just as patriotic, right? So I'm gonna say something that's really gonna turn a bunch of people off. Biden made mistakes. Okay? Everybody made mistakes. Obama made some mistakes. Trump has made mistakes. No president is perfect. However, that being said, a president needs to take care of all Americans. Liberty and justice for all. And say what you want about the Biden administration, and data will back this up. The bipartisan infrastructure law, bipartisan, that Biden put together, right, in under 4 years in office, and the CHIPS and Science Act has disproportionately benefited more red states than blue. And Biden took a lot of shit for that. But he understood, that the red states needed it more. And they've done analysis that reveals that majority of manufacturing jobs, the clean technology investments that were funded by the CHIPS Act and the infrastructure bill, the majority of those were in Republican-leaning states and congressional districts. So say what you want about the man. In that regard, he tried to do what was best for all Americans. Okay? And that's what a president is supposed to do. And part of this whole, I'm only going to vote red or I'm only going to vote blue, don't play into their game. The candidate has to have certain qualities. And one in my book is respect for the Constitution, and you have to have some integrity. The office of president, you don't just automatically respect the office of president. Respect is earned. And that's a very important piece. And this whole thing, I'm only ever going to vote red and I'm only ever going to vote blue, or my parents voted this way, so I'm going to vote this way. In my opinion, that's a cop-out. Do some research. Really look in depth at the candidates. People scroll on their phones all the time. They're on the internet all the time. But we're 250 years old. We're a baby as a nation. Fidelity to the Constitution. We have the right, we have the obligation to hold our leaders accountable, whether we voted for them or not. We, the people, have to hold them accountable. Hope you had a good 4th of July. Hope you'll weigh the words I've said carefully. Fidelity to the Constitution must take precedent over fidelity to a person or a party, or else America will die a very young death and will never reach our fullest potential. Which we said as a kid, right? Hand on our heart. Liberty and justice for all. Have a good day.